is use parallel direction. And as I said, each particle will orient itself towards the camera by rotating on all three axes. If, however, you want your particles to face the target and yet to stay parallel with each other, you can choose this option. When it's active, the particle orientation is derived by a line between the source object here, and the target, rather than the actual individual line for each particle. So, as you can see, if I turn that off, all the particles face towards the camera. If they surrounded the camera, they'd form pretty much a sphere around it, all facing towards it. Whereas if you use parallel direction, obviously they maintain this parallel orientation with each other. Now the next thing that this particular operator offers is the control over the scale of the facing particles. And you can see you've got three options in the size width area. You've got in world space, which is the default. You've got in local space, which is actually based on the original scale of the particle, and that's something you have to set up beforehand. So if I were to drop just a shape facing operator into a particle flow with no previous shape operator to set up that size and scale, that particular option wouldn't work. And then we have in screen space, which is useful for when your particles scale to be based on the actual render resolution that you're using. And that's a percentage of that render resolution. So the most basic of the three is in world space. So in other words, it's just like defining a radius of a sphere or anything like that. It's using world units, and you can see at the moment I've got it set to 14. So you can see as I move it up and down, you get different sizes on your facing geometry. If I go to in local space, I'll just show you the flow that actually leads up to this point to make in local space work correctly. What I've done is I've added a shape operator, which we covered in the last chapter, and you can see it's set to sphere. I've set the size to being 3.976, and then what I've done is I've gone and added a scale operator, which we covered in the previous DVD, and I've used the second option, which is scale variation, and I've given a variation in the scale of the particles. So what that does is it creates spheres, assigns those to the particles, gives them a definite scale, then modifies the scale of those particles randomly, so it gives a random size to each one of them. Then the shape facing operator kicks in. That gets rid of the shape that we previously assigned, but the actual previous size and scale is maintained in the particle channel data. So when we turn on in local space, you can see we get these facing particles, but as you can see they have a random scale to them. So if I actually go back and change this random scale value, you can see it's affecting the particles. And if I go back and turn off shape sphere, you can see that the particles, the facing shapes disappear. And that's because the original size value that was needed to actually get that particular option to work has now disappeared. So you need at least, you know, this shape operator in the particle flow before that option, otherwise that's just not going to work. So I'll just turn that back on, and you can see it's inheriting 100% of the scale of the way you've set it up previously. But again, you can go in and modify that. So you've got actually, you know, a lot of flexibility there. You can set up a lot of you can set up the size and the scale of the particles beforehand, you know, inherit those into this particular operator, and then you can change them afterwards as well. We'll just put that back to 100% for now. And the final option we have is screen space. Now, as you can see, I've got use parallel direction turned on, and when this is actually turned on, it aligns all the particles, as I said earlier, so they're all parallel with each other. And one of the things about that particular system is that then doesn't allow them to actually align with screen space correctly. So you can see that when we've got use parallel direction turned on, that the third option in screen space is actually not selectable. So you can't actually use this option when you've got use parallel direction turned on. So we'll just turn that off. Click on in screen space, and now you can see the particles are at different scales. The particles closest to the camera will be actually the smallest, and the particles furthest away will be the largest. That's because they're trying to maintain